Tonight, you are going to do something without thinking about it. You are going to flip a switch, strike a match, turn a knob on a stove, and warmth will appear, light will appear, and somewhere in the back of your brain, in a place so old it has no language, something will relax, because fire feels like yours. It feels like something your species figured out, conquered, mastered. One of the first great human victories over a cold and indifferent world. But that feeling is wrong, and the truth sitting underneath it is stranger, older, and far more unsettling than anything you learned in school. Because for most of human history, for hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors did not make fire. They stole it. The assumption is so embedded, you probably never thought to question it. Humans discovered fire. Humans tamed it. Humans used that control to cook food, stay warm, push back predators, and build the first foundations of civilization. That story is not entirely false, but it is missing something enormous. In 2012, a team led by archaeologist Francesco Berna at Boston University published findings from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa. What they found inside that cave pushed the controlled use of fire back to 1 million years ago. 1 million. Long before Homo sapiens existed. Long before any anatomically modern human walked the earth. Early hominins, our direct ancestors, were sitting beside fires, warming themselves, cooking with the heat, surviving because of it. But here is what the evidence did not show. It did not show fire-making tools. No flint, no strike stones shaped for the purpose, no friction devices. Nothing that suggested these early humans could produce fire when they needed it. They were using it consistently, reliably, across hundreds of thousands of years, and they had no way to make it. So where was it coming from? That is where the story gets uncomfortable. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard University has spent decades studying the relationship between fire, cooking, and human evolution. His research, detailed in his 2009 book, Catching Fire, makes a case that is still debated and still reverberating through the field. Wrangham's argument is this: cooking did not follow the development of the human brain. Cooking caused it. When early hominins began eating cooked food softened and partially broken down by heat, the digestive system changed. The gut shrank, the jaw shrank. The calories that had been spent digesting raw, fibrous plants and meat were suddenly freed up, and the brain, which burns an extraordinary amount of energy, began to grow. The human brain as you know it, the one reading these words, constructing meaning, imagining the past, may not exist without fire. But Wrangham's timeline creates a problem that most people walk right past. If the brain grew because of cooking, and cooking required fire, and fire-making tools did not appear until hundreds of thousands of years after fire use began, then, for an enormous stretch of human prehistory, your ancestors were entirely dependent on fire they could not create. They were waiting for lightning to strike a tree, running toward the smoke on the horizon after a wildfire, carrying embers across distances that would take days to walk, protecting that flame the way you would protect something irreplaceable, because it was. If the fire went out, it might be months before another one came, and they had no way to bring it back. But that is not the strangest part. Across cultures so separated by time and geography that there is no possible way they shared the story, the same memory survived. Not the memory of a discovery, the memory of a theft. The Greeks remembered Prometheus, a titan who stole fire from the gods on Mount Olympus and carried it down to humanity. The punishment for that theft was eternal. He was chained to a rock. An eagle came each day to eat his liver. Each night it grew back, and each day it was eaten again. That is the price the myth remembered for fire. Not mastery, not ingenuity, a theft and a cost that never ended. On the other side of the planet, Aboriginal Australians carried stories of the firehawks, birds of prey, black kites, and whistling kites that were observed deliberately carrying burning sticks from active wildfires and dropping them in dry grass ahead of the fire front, driving animals out of cover, hunting with fire. Scientists began documenting this behavior systematically in 2017. The birds were not mythologized. They were remembered accurately across tens of thousands of years of oral tradition. And what did ancient Australians remember about how humans first got fire? They watched the birds. They took what the birds were already using. Indigenous traditions across North America carry nearly identical structures. Fire as something that belonged to another creature, to the sky, to something beyond human reach, until a trickster figure, a clever animal, a desperate ancestor reached out and took it. Every civilization on Earth that left a record of the beginning of fire remembered the same thing. It was not made. It was taken from something that already had it. That pattern is not coincidence. When stories separated by oceans and millennia, and every every possible cultural barrier converge on the same image, they are usually converging on something real. Your ancestors remembered, in the only way memory survived before writing, that fire did not begin with human cleverness. It began with human desperation. A species that needed something it could not produce, that watched lightning crack open a tree and felt something older than thought pull them toward the smoke, that learned to keep what they could not yet create, that built the first human communities not around invention, but around protection, around the single shared responsibility of making sure the fire did not go out tonight. That is where your instinct to gather around a flame comes from. Not triumph, vigilance. The ability to reliably make fire, to strike stone against stone and produce a spark on demand, did not appear in the fossil record until somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 years ago, possibly later. The dates shift as new sites are found, which means there is a gap of hundreds of thousands of years, during which the creature that would become you was shaped by fire, fed by fire, neurologically rebuilt by fire, without ever being able to make it. You are sitting on the other side of that gap right now, surrounded by switches and lighters and stoves, able to produce fire in 3 seconds without thinking about it. And somewhere underneath all of that, in a part of your nervous system that evolution has not erased, there is still something that watches a flame and refuses to look away. That is not aesthetic appreciation. That is the oldest memory your body has. The memory of a time when losing the fire meant losing everything. When warmth was not something you made, it was something you were terrified to lose.